Okay, we have to talk about artificial intelligence. We have to talk about deep fakes and this feeling we all have that it's getting harder and harder to tell what's real anymore. But here's the twist. What if I told you that our best guide for getting through all of this is actually a psychologist who was born over 150 years ago?
All right, first things first, let's set the stage with a problem that, let's be honest, we're all wrestling with right now. We're living in a world of digital deception, where you just can't always trust what you see. I mean, think about it, can you? It sounds like such a simple question, right? But these days the answer is, well, it's incredibly complicated. Every single day, we're just bombarded with images, with videos, with news clips. How much of it is actually real? This isn't just some random thought anymore. It's becoming a core anxiety of modern life.
This line, which is actually inspired by the TV thriller The Capture, it just nails the feeling, doesn't it? It feels like we are in a battle for the truth. You know, sophisticated deepfakes, manipulated media. This stuff is not science fiction anymore. It's here, and it's being used to create confusion and to influence everything from public opinion to our political process.
The creator of that very show, Ben Channon, he puts it perfectly. He says, perhaps we will soon have to find new ways to judge the veracity of video footage. Just let that sink in for a second. The old ways of checking things, of verifying them, they're starting to fail us. We can't just trust our eyes anymore. We need a whole new framework for understanding what's real. So, where do we even begin to look for one?
Well, to find that framework, we're actually going to go back in time. Because it turns out this isn't a totally new problem. I want you to meet Joseph Jastrow, an American psychologist who spent his entire life tackling a very, very similar challenge more than 100 years ago. And listen, Jastrow wasn't some obscure academic nobody's ever heard of. This guy was a pillar of American psychology. Born in Warsaw, he gets his PhD from Johns Hopkins, becomes a professor for decades, and even served as the president of the American Psychological Association. He was a true foundational figure in his field. And this right here, this was his mission in life. While a lot of his colleagues were perfectly happy staying in their university labs, Jastrow was passionate about taking psychology to the people. He really saw it as his job to use science to help the public sort out fact from fiction. Sound a little familiar? And believe me, he really walked the walk. He wasn't just cooped up writing for academic journals. He was out there. He was giving public lectures. He was writing for huge magazines like Popular Science and even Cosmopolitan. He had a newspaper column that was syndicated in 150 different papers, and he even hosted radio talks. The guy was basically the original science communicator. So how did Jastrow teach people to spot all this deception? Well, he started by showing them just how easily their own minds could be tricked. And he did it using one of his favorite tools, the optical illusion.
Now, for Jastrow, an illusion wasn't just some cheap party trick. He knew that our eyesight is way more complex than a camera. The real magic, or, the real mistake, happens up here, in the brain. It's how we mentally process an image that actually defines our reality. And this is his most famous example. I'm sure you've seen it before. Is it a rabbit, or is it a duck? Jastrow made this illusion famous not just because it's clever, but because it shows us something really profound about how we see the world. Here's the crucial point he was making. You are not just passively receiving information, like a camera taking a picture. Your brain is actively interpreting it. Jastrow said that what you see, whether you see a rabbit or a duck, really depends on your emotional state, on your surroundings, and maybe most importantly, on the expectations you came in with. Okay, so let's make the jump. What in the world does a little 19th century drawing have to do with 21st century artificial intelligence? The answer is everything. It is the exact same psychological principle, just supercharged with modern technology. Just look at this comparison. Jastrow's illusion, it uses ambiguous data to force your brain to make a choice, to fill in the blanks. A deep fake, it uses manipulated data, but it exploits the exact same mechanism. And here's the most important part. They both prey on your existing beliefs. Think about it. A deepfake is most powerful when it tells you something you already wanted to believe was true. That's what makes the lie feel so real. And Jastrow wasn't just talking about abstract ideas. No, he was an active debunker. The viral misinformation of his time wasn't deepfakes. It was things like spiritualism, psychic phenomena. He called these fads and fables and used his scientific training to expose them for what they were. And he did not mince words. He called these claims totally unscientific and misleading, and said they were the result of delusion, fraud, gullibility, and irrationality. He was basically a fact-checker for the Gilded Age, fighting the viral lies of his own time. So, what's the big takeaway here? How can Jastrow's century-old wisdom actually help us survive our crazy modern media world? Well, it all comes down to adopting his mindset. Jastrow's starting point was a simple but really powerful idea. We all have our own theories about how our minds work, but we're often wrong. We walk into every situation, we look at every video, every news article with a whole set of built-in biases. And just recognizing that, that's step one. So here's a quick practical guide on how to think like Jastrow. First, acknowledge your preconceptions. Before you react, before you share something, just ask yourself, do I want this to be true? Am I seeing a duck just because I was hoping to see one? Second, apply a little scientific method. Question the claims. Where's the evidence? Is this source actually reliable? And third, educate yourself and the people around you. The more you understand how deepfakes actually work, the less likely you are to be fooled by one. You know, Joseph Jastrow dedicated his life to helping people find the truth among the deceptions of his time. Today, the tools of deception are infinitely more powerful. So the question that he was wrestling with back then is now the question for all of us. In a future where seeing is no longer believing, how will we ever agree on what's real?